Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm very excited about because I'm going to be chatting through some very popular books that I personally think are well worth the hype. I feel like we've all been led astray sometimes by a popular book recommendation. Personally speaking, I think all of these books are well worth the hype they receive. Before we dive into the books themselves, first a word from this video's sponsor, which is Curology. I'm so excited to be partnering up with Curology once again for this video. I love Curology so much. They are truly a part of my skincare both morning and night, and I love their products immensely, which is why I'm just so thrilled I've had the opportunity to work with them so long. But if you're not familiar, Curology is the leader for made-for-you skincare sent directly to your door. The convenience of this is truly unmatched. Through their site, you're able to shop a huge variety of skincare items, from moisturizer to cleanser to lip balm, but also through Curology, you're able to work directly with the skincare provider, letting you have access to skincare items with active ingredients that can target things like acne or fine lines and wrinkles. As I've mentioned many times, I've been using a retinoid-based product through Curology now for about 8 months, and I have been loving the result. My skin is softer, the texture is so much better, it's bouncier, and it was so seamless to add alongside my other skincare products that I use every single night. Some other things I wanted to quickly give a shout out from Curology that I love are their travel-sized products. Listen, I love to bring my favorite skincare products alongside with me when I travel, so luckily I was able to acquire some smaller sized versions of these. I'm taking a big trip in May to Japan, and my skin generally freaks out when I travel, so I didn't want to change too many things. Luckily, I have the smaller sizes of my favorite Curology products to bring alongside with me. And another item I wanted to shout is their sunscreen. Just in general, sunscreen season is very much upon us. You should be wearing sunscreen every day, but especially now with summer approaching. Sunscreen is not only great for your skin, but it also protects you from damaging and harmful UV rays. So this is my sunscreen PSA. Wear sunscreen. Luckily for you, the Curology sunscreen is great. It leaves no white cast. I love it a lot. If you guys want to check out and learn more about Curology, I will of course have a link down to their website below where you'll also be able to get a special offer, which is great. But thank you so much to Curology for partnering with me for this video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive back into the books. The first book I'm going to feature is actually a newer release, but hopefully this might be helpful in terms of making your decision if you want to pick it up or get it from the library or not. And the book I'm talking about is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Leigh Bardugo is probably one of the most popular authors out right now, and this release by her is a dark historical fantasy story, and I'm not gonna lie, I personally ate it up and enjoyed it immensely. I will say, if you have a little bit of patience, this book I feel like would hit so hard in the fall-winter season, just given the ambiance and the vibes of the story, but in general, of course, would be super fun to read at any point in the year. But this book is set during the golden age of Spain, and we follow our main character, Luisa, who works as a servant within a household. In this household, she's very much mistreated. Her mistress is very cruel, and her mistress herself is also kind of on the poor end of nobility within Spain, meaning that they don't have a lot of means for their daily life, and she also takes this out on Luisa. One day, though, her mistress notices that Luisa actually is able to perform like small miracles, and she sees this as an opportunity to gain more favor in town, and Luisa begins to perform these miracles at dinner parties. Unfortunately for everyone involved, this captures the eye of some more powerful people hoping to use Luisa to gain favor again with the king. Now Luisa has gotten wrapped up in a competition where she has to participate and compete against other miracle workers during this time period, and it all gets complicated very, very fast. The elements of this book that I personally enjoyed a lot was, one, the atmosphere. This book definitely has an edge and a darkness to it, not just in the ambiance of the story, which it's definitely there, and the use of religion and politics for the time period, but also just like in the characters themselves. Luisa, as well as a lot of the side characters, all kind of have an edge to them. They're likable, they're rootable, but kind of how they move through the world and interact with each other is not necessarily the kindest, and I appreciated that inclusion in this book, and I feel like it worked very, very well. This book also has a romance, definitely again a darker leading romance with a mysterious figure in man who's immortal, kind of gives vampire vibes. Part of this book that I really enjoyed was how much Leigh Bardugo used real history to influence the setting and plot of this book, and it honestly just worked so well. From the political realities of the time period for Spain, with the religious considerations and the societal considerations of the time period too, Leigh Bardugo really used history to her benefit, needed in this book, and I feel like that in combination with the fantastical elements just created something that was very atmospheric and very hard to put down. I really liked this. I had very high expectations going into this, and I do feel like Leigh Bardugo delivered. Another book that I do feel like is very much worth the hype is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This book I feel like graced a lot of top book lists of last year. It's a first book to a new fantasy series, and just in general, it generated a lot of buzz. I personally gave it 5 stars, so I can honestly say with my whole heart that I think it's really worth the hype and also a great place to start if you're kind of newer to the fantasy genre, because the book itself reads so fast. But this is book 1 to a new Roman-inspired fantasy series by this author, and in the story we're introduced to our main character, Viz. And Viz is an orphan and also hiding a big secret because he is the heir to a kingdom that was taken over by this empire that he now lives in. The magic system in this world is also very interesting. The empire itself is very much structured in a hierarchy, and this doesn't just show itself like socially, but also everyone has to give their will over to this hierarchy, and will is used by people as magic in this world. And the higher you are up in this world, the more will you have access to. Viz, at the beginning of this book, while trying to lay low as an orphan, kind of gets wrapped up in some unexpected politics. Basically, he's recruited as a spy for a faction of the government to go to this really prestigious military academy. But on the way there, he's also kind of being blackmailed by an entirely different group of people who also spy on his initial benefactors. So to say that Viz is stuck between a rock and a hard place, kind of an understatement. And from there, we watch Viz as he settles into this school setting, tries to just like pass his everyday schoolwork while also trying to balance the different powerful individuals in his life and gather as much information as possible. This series is full of action, great characters, friendship, and camaraderie, lots of double dealing, lots of spying as well, and just the plot itself is really unputdownable. It was very entertaining, and for a first book to a new series, I also found it to be very, very promising. Another beloved series that I personally am a huge fan of is the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. I'm currently on book 7 of this really long space opera series, so I feel like I can say wholeheartedly that this series, at least where I'm at in book 7, has stayed very entertaining, very breakneck in terms of its plot pacing the entire time. This is a multi-POV space opera, and if you want something that's very plot first, this is the series for you. The twists and turns of this series has honestly given me whiplash, and I've just had a blast reading it. The series is set in a near future reality where humanity has gone beyond the bounds of Earth, and now there are powerful governments on Earth, the Moon, Mars, and also a series of space stations called the Belt. There is an immense amount of tension at the beginning of the series between all of these different governments, and we also were introduced to our main character named Jim Holden, who is a space captain, and at the beginning of book 1, him and his crew stumble upon an ancient alien artifact that sort of sets off a spark for the entire system, and war and conflict sort of erupt from there. I will say the series sounds kind of straightforward, but it's really not. Every book focuses on a new conflict. We're constantly being introduced to new characters. We're viewing things from so many different points of views. It grows on itself so well, and I'm honestly just shocked with how James S.A. Corey is able to keep the plot so fresh. Like, I never know where they're going to go in terms of the story, but I'm always really excited to see and find out for myself. You'll also fall in love with so many different characters, and just the whole thing will really, really consume you. I also hear the TV show is quite good too, but I really, really love the book series. Next up, I actually have a cozy recommendation, and that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. This is a very beloved, cozy, romance-leaning read, and for good reason. I literally cried while reading this book. It burrowed into my heart. I think about it all of the time. I was smiling the entire time while reading this, and I can also say that the audiobook is excellent, but this is just so cute to be straightforward. But in this story, we're introduced to our main character, Mika Moon, and Mika Moon is a witch, but she has been taught her whole life that she has to keep her magic secret. Due to this, she's always had a hard time sort of fitting in and making friends because she has to keep so much of herself private and secret from everyone around her. However, though, she has found a little bit of refuge by making witchy videos online, sort of hiding in plain sight, if you will. At the beginning of this book, though, she receives an unexpected letter basically inviting her to become a teacher to 3 young witches at this faraway property. She's unsure to accept because she's always been taught that witches shouldn't spend a lot of time together in close proximity to avoid detection by other humans, but she decides to take a chance, travel to this home, and so begins the story from there. This book centers found family again and has a romance between our main character and a very handsome, grumpy librarian. It also features Mika as she sort of just settles in and begins to teach these 3 young girls. It's cute, It's charming. It has so many amazing elements. There's also another book coming out by this author in the same series where our main character who's a witch opens an inn. I mean, what's there not to love with that, you know? It's so freaking cute. The next book I have to recommend is the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. This has kind of been a recent revisit for me because I've actually read the first book, Gideon the Ninth, now 3 times. So I feel like I'm kind of an expert in terms of letting you know if I like this series or not. This series honestly was a bit of a surprise with how much I ended up loving it. People really enjoy this series, and for some reason I think all the hype made me skeptical, but I picked it up and I'm not gonna lie, I had a blast reading every single book in the series that's been released so far. It's also just one of the most unique and fresh series I have read in a while. Like, I truly can say I have no idea what to expect from this author, and I just have a blast picking up and reading their books. But this series is set in kind of a sci-fi fantasy world in which necromancers exist, and there are these planets and these houses that exist on each planet, and they all kind of specialize in a different set of necromantic abilities. At the beginning of book 1, we're introduced to our main character Gideon, and Gideon lives on Ninth House. She hates living here. She's been trying to escape this house her entire life. Her arch nemesis named Harrow has stopped her every single time. However, though, at the beginning of book 1, they reach an unlikely agreement. Harrow has been invited to First House to be involved in this competition that could make them politically powerful, which she needs for Ninth House. Gideon has to go alongside her as her sword protector. Things get complicated fast. The fun thing about this series is that each book is so unbelievably distinct, from the writing style to almost like the genre. The main character POV we're reading from and following, and the voice of the book changes book over book over book, and that inconsistency honestly has been something I've loved so much. Book 1 very much gives like murder mystery whodunit in space, and Gideon as our main character is very funny and very like direct and also very non-serious. Book 2 could not be a more different pivot than book 1, and book 3, which I read recently, again, a huge change, but I loved every single book for different reasons. This series has just been a breath of fresh air for me. I've had a blast. The magic system, everything about it is so complicated and confusing in a way that I love immensely. The next book I have to recommend is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the first book to a fast-paced, multi-POV fantasy story that, again, I feel like a lot of people talk about, and for good reason. This series is inspired by pre-Columbian history and also kicks off right before a very significant event, which is an eclipse. This eclipse is significant for a variety of reasons, from a religious point of view, from a social and political point of view as well. It's a countdown clock that all of our characters are also working within, meaning the pacing of this book is bananas. In this story, we're introduced to a variety of characters. First is a ship captain who agrees to take on an unexpected cargo for a steep price. However, though, when this cargo arrives on her deck, she realizes it's a person, and this person might actually be a powerful individual from a religion's subset that's like rushing to try to get to the capital. We follow that person's point of view as they're traveling on this boat. And lastly, we follow an individual who's at the capital right before this eclipse, who's a part of this sort of powerful religious order. I really appreciated Rebecca Roanhorse's world building within this series, particularly her religious world building, and how that really intertwined with the politics and the social reality of the city and places that she created. It just became very, very fascinating, and I really loved book 1. I personally need to read book 2 soon, but there's a reason why a lot of people talk about this, because it's very, very good. And the last book I'm going to feature is actually a literary fiction story, and probably the book with the most reviews among the ones I'm featuring today, and that book is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. This book is immensely popular. It has over 400,000 reviews on Goodreads. It also has an Apple TV Plus adaptation that was really well received as well, and I have to say, like, this book is popular for good reason. This continues to stand as being one of the best books I've simply ever read, from a writing style point of view, from a structure and plotting point of view. This book was truly one of the most astounding and beautiful and heartbreaking things I have ever read. This is also the story of a family. We start out in Korea, following sort of the grandmother matriarch figure. As a young woman, she becomes pregnant and she makes the decision to leave Korea and travel to Japan with her new husband. From there, we follow the perspectives of her children and her children's children, people connected to the family. There are lots of different unexpected connections as well. We see this family survive hardship, survive World War II, survive their mistreatment as Koreans in Japan, and we follow them basically at the turn of the century all the way up to almost present day, and we see the legacy of the pain through generations, but also the bravery and loyalty that exists within this family as well. It's truly a feat of writing and storytelling, a stunning book from beginning to end. And again, just one of the best things I've ever read. So if you haven't read Pachinko, regardless if you don't often read literary fiction, I highly implore you to check it out. Alrighty guys, those are some popular books that I personally think are well worth the hype. Again, big shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Curology. Thank you again for working with me for this video. I will again have a link down to their site as well as my special offer down below, but thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!